All right, Nick, the Atlanta Falcons are who we're talking about today, and there has been a lot of turnover on this roster. Most notably, Matt Ryan has left the Falcons to go to the Colts. That's a big hit, I think, overall. But let's take a deeper look at this Falcons roster. I want to know, are they a good roster? Are they a bad roster? Are they somewhere in the middle? There's been a lot of turnover. There's been a lot of new players coming into this roster, so it's very unsure of where they are at. And I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper into this. But before we get into this story, Nick, I want to ask the Falcons fans, let us know below. What do you think the Falcons win total is going to be this season? How many wins are they going to get? Leave it in the comments below, and just let us know what you're thinking. What's the baseline for you? But Nick, anyways, let's get into this story.
Yeah, so CBS Sports came out. They went through every roster in the NFL and they ranked it. So I guess they went through and looked at every team's strengths and weaknesses and ranked 1 to 32 the best and worst rosters in football. And what was very interesting to me is they had the Atlanta Falcons here at 32, which kind of looked me in the eyes kind of strange, right? This team has some talent. They have some really good athletes, and we'll go into that a little bit there. But I kind of think CBS Sports, I think they're way off the rocker here. I think there's a lot worse rosters in the NFL, looking at teams like the Jaguars come to mind, the Texans come to mind, as rosters that I would definitely rank well below the Atlanta Falcons. But to be fair, we like to be impartial. We like to do the research and think about it a little bit. So let's go and break down the Falcons roster position group by position group and see exactly how they shake out. We're going to rank them on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being elite, 5 being not elite, bad bottom 5 in the NFL. So Miles, get us going. Let's start with the Falcons roster.
All right, Nick. First up, as always, quarterback. The quarterback room for the Falcons. As again, we'll reiterate, 1 means elite, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. 5 means not elite, like you got your Carson Wentz's, all the guys down there at the bottom. So we've given the Falcons a 3 out of 5, somewhere in the middle of the road. Why don't you tell me why you think that, Nick?
Yeah, so I think one of the things people are sleeping on the Falcons quarterback room a little bit because, I'm not as high on Marcus Mariota as a lot of people is. But to be fair, the guy has won a playoff game. He does have experience. What's kind of confused me is that a lot of people are really high on Jameis Winston and really don't like Mariota, even though their careers are really similar. And in a lot of ways, Mariota's been better, right? He's taking care of the football better. He's actually taken teams to the playoffs. So I kind of trust Mariota here a little bit more than a guy like Winston, who a lot of people are high on. And let's not forget, they do have a young guy in Desmond Ridder. There's a lot of potential opportunity there. I think there's a lot of teams in the NFL that have much, much worse quarterback situations than the Atlanta Falcons. So I put them at dead in the middle. They don't have a perfect answer yet, so they're not 1 or 2, but they're a lot better than people think they are.
Yeah, I think that the Falcons have an anchor in Mariota who can get them in and out of seasons. He's obviously not what you want to take you into the future. Some Falcons fans might tell you that, but I personally don't believe that he's the future of the team. But why they are somewhere in the middle is because you have that young, unproven rookie. He could be great. He could be garbage, but you don't know. So that all combined together, that's about a 3. That's right in the middle. So I think that's spot on, dead perfect. But let's move on to our next position group. We've got our skill positions being wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, and once again, a little bit middle of the road, 3 out of 5. What do you think here, Nick?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Falcons here too. Obviously, Kyle Pitts should be recognized by anybody as a potential generational talent. The dude is, as advertised, coming out of Florida, a phenomenal athlete, great hands, can play all over the field. He's a matchup nightmare. But you and I have talked about this guy forever. A guy who doesn't get enough respect is Cordero Patterson. The guy can line up everywhere and do everything. He's just such an offensive weapon. I love his fit. He just gets underrated. He's basically similar role as Deebo Samuel, but doesn't get the press. And obviously the Falcons drafted London, the wide receiver, in the first round. If London turns out to be even, halfway decent and his potential is high, this isn't, a middle of the road group. This is a top 5, top 10, maybe a 1 or 2 receiver group, skill position group. So again, we have him at 3 right here because we don't know with London yet, but this is a lot more talented group than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, I think two factors. Obviously, Calvin Ridley is suspended for a whole year for gambling issues. And then Drake London is the unsure thing. And I think those are 2 things. I think for years to come, if Ridley comes back and plays at a level where he has been playing, that's big. But I don't foresee that. I think they're trying to move on from that whole ball of wax. But number 2, I think Drake London could be a guy. And depending on how Drake London is right now, I think he can bump this position group up very quickly. So like you said, it could go to a 2 or even a 1 really quickly, depending on the development of the rookies. So I think this is pretty a high level 3 for the Falcons. But next up, we have moved to the last part of the offense, the offensive line. I personally think one of the most important parts of the offense. But we have given them a 4 out of 5. It's pretty low, not the lowest it could be. But Nick, what are we saying on the Falcons' offensive line?
Yeah, this isn't a good line overall when you look at it top to bottom. Lindstrom at guard, he's solid. And I think Jake Matthews he's a respectable tackle who can do a good job at the left tackle position. So he's really the only reason they're not a 5 out of 5, because they have one good player, in my opinion, in Matthews playing left tackle, protecting the blind side. That's the most important offensive line position. So the fact they have, at least someone solid and a good player in that position is why they're not a 5 out of 5. But this is definitely a real weakness for the Atlanta Falcons. And I guarantee you next year, they're probably going to draft, if they think they have their quarterback, whether it's Mariota or Ritter, I think they go really heavy at offensive line next year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you here because when we talked about this earlier, and I told you, man, I can't even think of the Falcons' offensive lines. Obviously, they're not my favorite team, so I wouldn't know them in and out. But I knew Jake Matthews off the top of my head. Obviously, when you mentioned Lindstrom's name, that rings a bell. But other than that, all of these guys on the offensive line for the Falcons, no big names and not a lot of talent on this offensive line is kind of the thing overall dragging the offensive side of the ball down the most, I think. There's not a lot of hope for the offensive line with what you have. Is something you're going to have to build on, whereas we've said skill positions, quarterbacks, if some stuff develops, those pieces alone could boost you up in the rankings. But moving on to the other side of the ball, let's go to the Falcons' front 7. Well, it doesn't get any better. It is a 5 of 5, as low as it could be. Nick, why do we think this?
Yeah, I think the problem with the Falcons here is they've got a couple good players. Grady Jarrett, big fan of his, really, really nice player. Deion Jones has been around for a while. I really like him too. He's another one of those guys I think is underrated. But around those guys, they've just got question marks at best. I mean, they've got Lorenzo Carter. They brought him from the Giants. I watched a lot of Lorenzo Carter. I didn't think he was that good. I don't think he'll be that good for the Falcons. I mean, the rest of their defensive line isn't that good. They went out and drafted the pass rusher from Penn State. I won't butcher his last name, but he has potential. But again, it's a question mark. So outside of a guy like Grady Jarrett, who's a good player, Deion Jones, who I like, the rest of the front 7, it's just a bunch of guys. And I can't think of any one of these guys that's just a standout player. It's a lot of guys, a lot of question marks. I just don't think this is a very good group.
Nah, and like you said, there's a couple of guys, but when you say Grady Jarrett, when you say Deion Jones, especially Jones, when I say this, Grady's solid, not a superstar, but he's solid. Jones was pretty good. I think he's gotten hurt a little bit, and he was known for his speed, but after he's gotten hurt, took a little bit of a step back, hasn't been quite as effective as he was early on. But like you said, on all the other positions around this ball, very either extremely unproven with rookies or not great players at all. So there's so many spots to fill. Obviously, 2 out of 5 offensive line will give you a little bit more of a boost, give you a 4 instead of a 5. But out of the 7 guys on the line, you only got 2, so 2 out of 7. That's pretty low. That's definitely kind of as low as you can get for this front 7. But let's move to the back end of the defense and one where the Falcons shine a little bit more, and that is the secondary. They're once again back up middle of the road, 3 out of 5. They've got some high spots, some low spots. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, so obviously AJ Terrell at corner, he's a superstar. He's one of the best corners in the NFL. I think Casey Hayward Jr. opposite of him is really kind of an underrated guy. He's a really nice corner. And Falcons fans, give you some credit here. You guys turned me on to Isaiah Oliver. I watched and did some research on Oliver. He's didn't really know much about him. He's a better player as a kind of number 3 corner than I thought. So I give the Falcons here in terms of cornerback. If this was only corners, this would be a 1 out of 5. They have elite top tier cornerback group. Their safety play is just bad. I'm sorry. They just don't have quality safeties, and that's kind of holding the secondary group back. So doing high-level math here, right? They had a 1 at corner, a 5 at safety. You average it out, you get a 3. I think it just makes sense.
Yeah, it's like you said. It just makes sense. They have great corners. Terrell is excellent. We did a whole video on him a few weeks ago, so if you want to look at that, we talk about how he is as a player and what the Falcons could do with him this season to make him even better. But other than that, their safety play, is non-existent or not even worth mentioning. So that really drags this stellar corner group down a notch, which is sad, but that's something they can fix at least.
Yeah.
Like you said, a couple key moves there, bring in a good free agent, draft a solid rookie, boost you up real quick. Maybe you trade your first round pick to the Ravens for Chuck Clark. Bring him in. That'll do some magic for your secondary. But nonetheless, Nick, let's see the Falcons as a whole. So we've gone through every position group. As a whole, we have the Falcons at a 3.6 out of 5. Once again, 5 is the lowest, 1 is the highest, being elite. So 3.6, lower, middle, in my mind, makes sense because I see them into the mid-20s. I see them as like 22, 25, somewhere in there in the grand scheme of the NFL. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is exactly right. And this proves that the guys at CBS Sports who did this, they just got it completely wrong because the Falcons do have a number of key elite playmakers across the board. They've got left tackle right. They've got dynamic offensive weapons. They're great at corner. They just really need to really clean up some of the offensive line. They need to clean up the front seven. Their quarterback room, they have 2 shots at getting a franchise quarterback, whether it's Mariota or Ritter. So this roster is a whole lot better than the guys at CBS Sports give it credit for. Granted, this isn't a championship roster, but I think it's a whole lot better than some of these so-called experts have said.
All right, Nick, it's time to get your internet privacy back today on every device you own in any country you want. Don't let anyone but you control your internet. NordVPN keeps you safe from prying eyes wherever you go online with their military-grade encryption. Is your favorite Netflix or streaming content blocked in the US? You can simply connect to one of the many countries available with NordVPN and get the access you need.
That's right, Maya. So right now, get our exclusive NordVPN deal here at nordvpn.com/SMI. It's risk-free now with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, get that exclusive deal, nordvpn.com/SMI.